From the Peter Green blues era to the transitional chill rock era of Bob Welch to the legendary Buckingham Nicks era and beyond. It's a trip through Fleetwood Mac history with author Tim Durling next on Booked on Rock. Welcome back to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. I'm Eric Senich. Make sure you give the show a thumbs up and subscribe if you're a fan of the show. And for those who already have, thank you so much. Author Tim Durling is back on the show. His latest book, titled The Sound That Haunts You, a beginner's companion to Fleetwood Mac. Welcome back, Tim. Thanks to you now, I'm loving the Bob Welch era of Fleetwood Mac, which is, I'm sure that's part of the goal of this book.
It's just to introduce people to albums and like you said, eras that don't get the spotlight on them very much. And thanks for having me back, by the way. It's always a pleasure.
By the way, outstanding appearance on Pot of Thunder.
You know what? That was the latest. I'll be honest with you. That's the latest I've stayed up to record because of the time zones. It was almost midnight by the time that we got started. And I think I don't know, maybe it's just because I could feel it, but I think if you watch that, sometimes one of my eyes is kind of going like a little, because man, that was way past my bedtime. But no, that was a lot of fun. Those guys were a blast, and I love the little theme song they came up with for me. Instead of "Oh Darling" with the Beatles, it's "Oh Darling." I thought that was quite inspired. And yeah, no, those guys are great, and it's always so much fun when you sit in and you realize these guys are all good buds. Like I could just tell there's just a chemistry there, and
they made you feel comfortable and let you do your thing, man. You broke down "Don't Tell Me You Love Me" by Night Ranger, because that is one of the many books that you have out is on Night Ranger. And
yeah,
I'm now listening to that song and just thinking about all the things that you talk about, the song structure and the performance and the way they execute it and the whole thing. So it was just really cool. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll stay up again if those guys want to have me on again. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was a real pleasure hanging out with those guys. And it was just feel like it was scratching the surface because I'm coming into it new and I'm okay. They got all these features and they know what they're doing, and it's great. Yeah.
yeah. Chris Jericho's on the show. He's buds with those guys. Now this one on Fleetwood Mac, and you write about it in the book too. People may be surprised to see a book from you on Fleetwood Mac because you write about Night Ranger and Y&T and Sammy Hagar. I remember the harder rock.
Yeah, a little bit the melodic hard rock of the 70s and 80s. So yeah, this is a little bit off the beaten path, but that's all the more reason that I'm really happy with how this came out. I guess you could say that this was a book. I wasn't planning on doing a book on Fleetwood Mac. That never would have crossed my mind because I tend to do books on bands that don't have a lot of books written about them. I still don't think there are any other Night Ranger books or Y&T books. There aren't. I don't know if there's any other Sammy Hagar books that are just on his solo career, and there's really not much for Kansas either. This is different. I mean, Fleetwood Mac, there have been books written about Rumors, just one album. So what am I doing here? Into the fray. But I'm really glad that it happened the way it did. My mother-in-law kind of made a comment to me that, Tim, when are you going to write me a Fleetwood Mac book? And I don't think she was serious about it. She loves Fleetwood Mac, but I don't think that she realized that planted a seed. And I got thinking about it because the truth of the matter is, and I explained this in my introduction, it's still a band that I'm relatively new to. Like a band like Y&T I've been listening to for over 3 decades. Fleetwood Mac is a band that obviously I knew who they were, but they were just a band that was on the radio. They weren't in my wheelhouse. That's an overused term, but yeah, they just weren't on my radar as a band to dig into. Nobody in my family seemed to listen to them, as like older, my parents from aunts and uncles. Like I know Rumors was such a huge album and it was practically a household item at one point, but nobody in my family seemed to listen to them. So I'm coming into it as sort of when I first really became aware of them was Tango in the Night in 1987, because by then I was really following popular music. So about 12 years ago, when my wife and I kind of started dating, she was a huge, I mean, she likes to joke that she was listening to Fleetwood Mac in the womb because her mom was such a big fan, but they're one of her favorite bands too. And she would be playing songs that I'd never heard before. Uh, One that really got to me was Never Going Back Again from Rumors, which is an all acoustic song. And I've like Lindsey Buckingham never gets talked about in the sort of the pantheon of great guitar players, but he's a genius. I mean, he's a genius arranger and songwriter and producer and all of that. But his guitar playing is he's like the thinking man's guitar hero or something.
The
Because
finger picking style.
I couldn't get over it. I was like, that is so good. And he's singing that and he's doing it live too. And I'm like, okay, there's something here. And also I had known for a few years that, there have been several Fleetwood Macs. I mean, there have been several lives to this band because, you know, I don't think the average radio listener knows, that 75 album, the self-titled one, that was their 10th album.
Isn't that amazing?
Their worldwide breakthrough. Yeah, I mean, they'd been kicking around for a long time in one form or another. I knew that, I eventually I learned that they started as a blues rock band. That's because of Aerosmith, because when I bought in 1991, Pandora's Box was their box set came out. And because of the order that I got into bands, Aerosmith were such a, they were an old band, but they had a second life. They had such a big comeback with Permanent Vacation at Pump. It just so happened they were the first band that I actively listened to that put a box set out. So I bought it. And among the many other treasures on there that had never been heard before is this raw live take on a song called Rattlesnake Shake, which is funny because Skid Row and Motley Crue both have songs called Rattlesnake Shake. Now here's a completely different song with that very unique title. It's not like Hold On or Without You. It's not like a song title that, Rattlesnake Shake, that's pretty specific. Anyway, I'm listening to this and I'm reading in the liner notes that it's a Fleetwood Mac song. I'm like, Fleetwood Mac? That doesn't sound like Fleetwood Mac. And who's Peter Green? Like, I was confused. So I'm like, okay, obviously there's a lot more to this band, and this band has been around a lot longer than I knew about. And a few years after that, I got into Led Zeppelin. And when you start reading about the history of Led Zeppelin, you're also going to read about Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, the early years. You're going to read about songs like Oh Well, and so that was sort of the seed planted. So it's on my peripheral, right? But once I started listening to them sort of more in earnest, I've never been somebody to pick up two or three albums by a group. I have this thing where I like to complete the collection. I want to hear it all.
As we can tell by looking behind you.
Yeah, it's a disease, no question about it. But I definitely wanted to dig deeper into this band. I was very, very interested in, well, what, if their breakthrough came with their 10th album and Rumors was the 11th album, well, what came like what came before? That's a lot of material to put out. And in a short amount of time, the first album came out in 68. So this is one of those bands that had two albums a year at sometimes. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to take the approach to this book. I mean, on the surface, it's very similar to my Sammy Hagar book because it's just me. This one is just me. It's not like it's not a panel discussion book, but I thought, well, okay, if I was trying to tell somebody how to get into a band like this, how would I do it coming at it from the perspective of somebody that grew up on hard rock music and coming into a band that's got a little bit of everything, really. I don't really know how you just describe this band because of all of these different genres and band members and songwriting styles and you name it. So I thought, okay, that's going to be my approach. That's why I called it a beginner's companion instead of a listener's guide. I guess it's kind of the same thing, but it's more like if anybody out there has, Rumors or the greatest hits or the dance, and they think, well, maybe I'd like to go further, but you go on, you type in Fleetwood Mac albums online. There's a million. It looks like there's a million of them. It's like, well, where do you even start? So I thought, okay, I'm going to go through like I do with my books, each studio album, all the songs on them, what I think about each of these albums, and then any songs that were sort of stray that didn't belong to an album, we'll talk about those, and we'll see what happens. And I really I like how it came out. I did the well, each chapter is an album, but I didn't do them in chronological order. I jumped back and forth with writing about each one because I did that on purpose because I didn't want it to sound like here's another one and here's another one and here's another one. I wanted to be listening to a completely different album every time. And I kept putting rumors back. I kept pushing it back. I'll get to that. I'll get to that
That was
because
the last
I
one you
was
did, right?
yeah, I was a little intimidated because what am I going to write about such a huge album that continues to sell and will I mean, I've talked about songs that will outlive us all. That album will outlive us all. You know, somebody somewhere in the world right now is listening to Rumors in its entirety for the first time. And so I tried to approach it as that. It's like imagine hearing these songs for the first time because in a lot of cases I was hearing them for the first time 12 years ago. I was not inundated with them. So yeah, so eventually I got to Rumors and I tried to put myself in the position of, this is an album that sold, I don't know, it's one of those, it's in the Diamond Album Club, I don't know, 26, 27 million albums or whatever worldwide. And it really is good. I mean, it really is one great song after another. So it's like, imagine hearing it for the first time for those that have heard that one to death. But not everybody's heard Bare Trees, not everybody's heard Mr. Wonderful or, so that was the goal. It was to give each album its due. And I really, and well, like we were talking about, anytime I do these books, I got to do some serious listening. I have to just drill the albums in so that I just know them inside and out. And I gained such a new appreciation for the Bob Welch era. That is the overlooked era of Fleetwood Mac, and it shouldn't be. Now, I mean, I say it's overlooked. A couple of those albums eventually went gold and platinum, like a couple of them, but you never hear songs from them on the radio, which is a shame because there are several songs on there that would sound really good on the radio and give, the well-worn war horses of songs a break now and then. But that doesn't, we know that doesn't happen, the state of things. But but I want people to say, hey, let's check this stuff out because from 71 to 74, there's five albums. And Bob Welch was like the creative spearhead behind it. And if it, he was the first American that was in the band, and he literally, convinced them to move to the United States, and that changed everything. But it's such a good bridge between the blues stuff and the name, the music that the name Fleetwood Mac conjures up in most people's minds. Because Fleetwood Mac is a lot of things to a lot of people. If you came of age in the late 60s and you were a guitar player, mostly in the UK, but certainly there were some fans in the US. I mean, like I said, Aerosmith, Joe Perry was a huge fan of this stuff. So people were listening to it, just not a lot. It was like a cult thing. To people like that, that's Fleetwood Mac. You know what I mean? That's what Fleetwood Mac is. And that's just that commercial stuff that came after. Everybody comes in at different points, but there really is something for everybody in this band's catalog. And I think that people would be surprised at the variety. You're getting with each album, you're getting several different styles on an album. I will say, except for maybe the first two albums, those are pretty much straight ahead blues, blues rock with emphasis on blues. But after that, it's all over the place.
That Peter Green tone you hear a lot about from guitarists. In fact, Mike Campbell, when they made the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers made the Mojo album, he was really going after that Peter Green tone. Let's go back to the beginning. Who's in the lineup in the beginning? The first two albums are with, or actually the first album has Bob Running on bass.
On a couple of tracks. Long Gray Mare, I think that might be one of the only ones, and then a couple other songs that weren't on an album. So yeah, John McVie was like debating being in the band. Of course, he joined up, and my joke is that Fleetwood Bob just doesn't have the same ring to it. But yeah, Mick Fleetwood, John McVie are, of course, they're the namesakes of the band, and they're the constants throughout the entire career. Everything revolved around them. But yeah, Peter Green was, lead singer, lead guitarist, one of the main songwriters, but he's like a guitar hero for those in the know. I think more people know about him now than even 20 years ago. You didn't hear that much about him, right? You'd hear bits and pieces, but I mean, Kirk Hammett from Metallica owns his gold Les Paul, which he nicknamed Greenie. He became quite close with Peter Green in his final years before he passed away in 2020. Like they were hanging out, which is kind of interesting. Um, but and you might be thinking, okay, Metallica's guitar player. Well, I mean, look, anybody that's a Judas Priest fan knows the Green Manalishi with the two-pronged crown. That is a Fleetwood Mac song.
Peter Green era.
Yeah, and if you listen to the original version of that from 1969, and I would encourage any Priest fan to do that, it's a heavy song for the time period. I mean, it could have been on the first Sabbath album. It's doomy and dark and menacing, and that's a Peter Green. It's a Fleetwood Mac song. Believe it or not, it's a head trip. It's a head trip because there are lots of songs that you could play for your average listener and say, "Tell me who that is," and they'll guess anybody but Fleetwood Mac.
Jeremy Spencer.
Jeremy Spencer was another, yeah, he was in the earliest incarnations of the band, and he did a lot of the slide guitar work, and he was a young man when he joined. I mean, none of them were old, of course, but I mean, he was barely 20 when that first album came out, and he sang like a 50-year-old blues man from the American South. And here's this British kid, but he's got that raspy blues voice. And then you had, yeah, so that was the main lineup. But really starting with, I think the second album, you had piano. Anytime that you the piano or whatever, there was somebody named Christine Perfect who played on that. She wasn't credited, but of course she married John McVie. That's Christine McVie, and eventually, of course, she became, I think, a pivotal member of the band and like the sort of dependable member of Fleetwood Mac as far as songwriting and singing and you know being a constant once she was officially a member. But it's pure blues rock with emphasis on blues, and I'm very honest about it. And I respect the blues genre immensely because I know that rock music as we know it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the blues. I just don't have that much of an appetite to listen to straight blues. I can, a little goes a long way with me, and my ear is not fine tuned enough to pick out the differences because when I was reviewing these, especially the first two albums, there were times when I had to check to see if a song ended and another song started. It started to sound the same to me, and that's that's me being a complete Philistine to blues, and I know that. Uh, but starting with the third album, and unfortunately it was the last one with Peter Green, then Play On is an amazingly good album. And it was them, they still had plenty of blues in them, but they were changing and they were branching out. And it was starting to turn into something very, very special and not just another blues rock group.
And they added a new member.
Yeah.
Danny Kerwin.
Yeah. Danny Kerwin does not get enough credit because he was in the band after Peter Green left. He was in the band after Jeremy Spencer left. And he was a good songwriter and a good singer. And his contributions were very important to the band. And I wanted all of these guys to get their due. It's really weird how things turn out. You mentioned Mike Campbell. I mean, the last time Fleetwood Mac toured, Mike Campbell was in the band. So
with Neil Finn of Crowded House.
With Neil Finn of Crowded House. And that's the second time that they realized they needed two people to take the place of Lindsey Buckingham. Because he was such a singular, unique personality and such a visionary figure in the history of the band. And there's so many tangents to go to, but that's why I wanted to go album by album and not shoot back and forth all over the place. So I really do think that if you wanted to listen to one of these albums, read the chapter on it as you're listening to it, and I think you'll get a pretty good idea of what it's all about.
That third album has Showbiz Blues, which is one of the best Peter Green era songs.
Yeah, and the ironic thing about
and Rattlesnake Shake is on that one.
And the ironic thing is that you have to get the deluxe version of Then Play On to get the Green Manalishi and to get Oh Well, which is by far the best known Fleetwood Mac song from that early era. I think a lot more people know that song than know what it's called on Who Does It, because a ton of people have covered Oh Well. It's a great, great song. It influenced Black Dog by Led Zeppelin. That whole idea of the song stopping and then starting again. I've read that.
The call and response. Yeah. Black Crowes made it famous too. They did it with Page.
They did it with Page. Yeah, Slash did it not that long ago. Deep Purple did it. Lots of people have done. Oh well, it's a heavily covered song. And other thing that so this leads into one of my favorite parts of doing this book. Once I got through all the albums, I wanted to do something else so that it wasn't a really short book. I said I need to add something to this, and there were a lot of their songs, whether it's the early stuff like "Oh Well," or the Buckingham Nicks era songs like "Landslide" and "Songbird" and "The Chain" that tons of people have covered. But I got thinking, I presented a challenge to myself. I went out and tried to find, and I did 100 different cover songs, Fleetwood Mac songs covered by 100 different artists, 100 different songs, not five versions. And you talk about running the gamut. That spans just about every form of music, as I mentioned, except hip hop and rap. I couldn't find any hip hop or rap covers, although I'm sure some of their songs must have been sampled over the years. There would have to have been, but I mean, there's reggae, there's country, there's ambient, there's metal, there's R&B, like all kinds of different things. And that's where I really had fun because what I did is I went in chronological order of these cover songs. Didn't matter when the cover was done, but when the original came out. So I went through their entire discography again, this time via other people's interpretations of their songs. And I wanted to make sure there were certain covers that I wanted to make sure and highlight. One of them was Santana doing Black Magic Woman, which
Right.
most people think that's probably an original song, but guess what? There's Peter Green again. The guy was a genius. He wrote songs that just people responded to over and over again. But yeah, Black Magic Woman is a Fleetwood Mac song. If you listen to the original Fleetwood Mac version, it's not that different. The only difference is that of course Santana adds that Latin flavor, and his version of Black Magic Woman is a lot of people just refer to it by the one title, but it's actually two songs. It goes into a song called Gypsy Queen by, and I can't think of his name, Gabor Sabo. I can't pronounce the name right. But when the song starts to speed up, that's the second part of the song. But there it is. I mean, there's a Peter Green song, a top five song all over the world, but not the Fleetwood Mac version, although they were very big in the UK and a lot, parts of Europe, Holland, and things like that in their earliest days. But so, yeah, I go through the entire, uh, it's almost all the way, no album is ignored. There's at least one song from every one of the Fleetwood Mac albums. I mean, Rumors there's been tribute albums just to Rumors. There's been a tribute album done just for Tusk. So, but I tried to mix it up. But I mean, so of course I've got Judas Priest listed doing the Green Manalishi. I've also got the first time that I ever heard the song "The Chain" was by the Canadian metal band Kickaxe, because
Yeah, I heard that's a great version.
they did a fantastic version of that on their third album in 1986 called Rock the World. And if you listen to it, it's faithful to the Fleetwood Mac version, but it's heavy. It's so cool. And I remember thinking that, okay, well, that's interesting. They're covering a Fleetwood Mac song, and it doesn't sound like AM radio. You know what I mean? Like, and then I heard the Fleetwood Mac original. I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty cool in its own right. They didn't do a lot to it.
Hey guys, back to the show just a bit, but first I want to tell you about an exclusive deal for Booked on Rock viewers. Get 15% off any purchase at oldglory.com. Over 300,000 officially licensed items covering music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture. Merchandise featuring legendary music artists like Bob Marley, The Beatles, Grateful Dead, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, and many more. Go to oldglory.com and make sure to use the promo code BookedOnRock. Also find a link in this episode's description, or just go to bookedonrock.com and click on My Deals. My favorite Fleetwood Mac song from the Peter Green era is not on any album. That's Albatross.
Yeah, that's right. And that, see, okay, now you're leading into something. The hardest part for me of doing this book was organizing all of those songs from the 67 to 69 period that weren't on one of the albums, because there were compilations that came out in the UK that were different to what came out in North America. There were songs that were just released as singles, and Albatross was one of those. So their second album, Mr. Wonderful, did not originally come out in North America. Instead, they put out a compilation called English Rose, which is like half of that album and then a few other songs. But then in the UK, they got a compilation called The Pious Bird of Good Omen, which if you know Samuel Coleridge, you'll know where that came from, or Iron Maiden. And it's similar but different. It's really confusing. Then they did that blues album in Chicago in 1969, which is some covers, some originals with all of these Chicago blues artists. It was really, really complicated putting all those together. But yeah, Albatross is an awesome instrumental.
And it did really well on the charts.
It was a number one song in the UK, and it was so big. I mean, people need to realize how big they were in the UK. When the Beatles were recording Abbey Road, I think the song we're talking about is Sun King. But George Harrison said, "Okay, let's be Fleetwood Mac doing Albatross here." That's how well known they were. They influenced the Beatles, for crying out loud.
That's high praise.
So yeah, so yeah, that is a great laid back instrumental. I joke that was the first, because there are a few Fleetwood Mac songs that come up on the yacht rock playlist. I'm like, Albatross is the first. That would totally work.
Sure, sure.
That sounds like you're at the beach.
Well, as we transition out of the Peter Green era, I guess Showbiz Blues is a good clue as to where Peter's head was at. He left because things were getting a little too commercial, or the band wanted to get more commercial.
Peter Green was an interesting guy. I mean, he was very obviously there were a lot of drugs. There was I mean, the Green Man Alicia is inspired by a bad LSD trip that he was on. But he was very spiritual. He felt that money was evil, and he never really, I don't think he ever really sought the fame that he could have had. You know what I mean? Like if he'd really gone for it, because people that know how great he was. I mean, Gary Moore did an entire, I think, tribute album to him called Blues for Greenie. So he was a big fan. He just inspired so many guitar players, and yet he's not a name that's on every guitar player's lips, or it would be recognizable. Or you'd think, when you say, well, who's the guitar player in Fleetwood Mac? Well, Lindsey Buckingham. You just don't think of him. So Jeremy Spencer, Danny Kirwan, even less. And Bob Welch, I mean, Bob Welch had a couple of solo hits later on in the 70s, one of which is actually a Fleetwood Mac song reimagined. But yeah, people just don't talk about Peter Green as much as they should. But yeah, he was really conflicted, and I often wonder, what would have happened if he just stuck around a little bit longer? I don't think his genre, his version of Fleetwood Mac would have coalesced with the Buckingham Nicks era, but every incarnation of Fleetwood Mac did well in concert, which is pretty cool. I mean, Bob Welch did it. Lindsey Buckingham did it. There's some great live versions of that. It survived all the way through. That's the one song of that era that they, I think, consistently did on a nightly basis when they were on tour. But yeah, he left, just as they were, and it probably was a shock to the band because they weren't struggling, they were ascending. And so you end up with a very confusing album, I think, called Kiln House, which is the fourth album. Came out in 1970. That's an interesting one because that's right in between Peter Green and Bob Welch. So you've got Jeremy Spencer and Danny Kirwan, and it is literally all over the place stylistically. It's all over the place, and so it's nowhere near as focused or as good as Then Play On. But then they get Bob Welch, and whether or not the album sales were there, they had a run of really good albums. So Future Games, Bare Trees, Penguin, Mystery to Me, and Heroes Are Hard to Find. Those are all really solid albums with Bob Welch at the helm. Especially Bare Trees. I think that one's my favorite of the bunch.
Yeah, that might be my favorite, although now I'm starting to lean towards the one with Hypnotized on it, which is Mystery to Me.
Well, Hypnotized is an amazing song.
Amazing song.
I think it did get a little FM airplay in the later 70s, and that song, it pops up once in a while, but again, it's one of those things where it's like it doesn't necessarily sound like Fleetwood Mac, so people don't realize who it is. But
No,
when you listen to that and realize there's no Pro Tools, there's no AI, that is Mick Fleetwood doing for like 5 minutes.
oh,
He just keeps, it's just, the song is what it sounds like. It is hypnotic. It keeps a pulse, and it just takes you into this world that's, oh, it's such a cool song.
that's what's fun. It's fun to listen to that rhythm section of Mick and John. It's a great rhythm section.
They always played just what the songs needed, and they and knew when not to play. I have a DVD. I've had it for quite a while now, but there was a UK series that came out called just called Classic Albums, and they would do a documentary on a particular album.
Great series.
Yeah, and so I've got the Rumors one among others, and they isolate John McVie's bass line from Go Your Own Way in the chorus, and it is awesome. It's a hook unto itself. You don't really notice it unless you point it out, and then when you hear that chorus, it wouldn't be the same without it.
They're locked in.
It is totally locked in. But it's very melodic. It's its own. It's not doing what the guitar is doing. It's doing what a bass should do. It's counterpoint. So, but yeah, great, and through all of those stylistic changes, those two have always found just the right thing to play.
I would call the Bob Welch era chill rock.
Very much so, and I've
I
just,
love it.
yeah, I've described. I don't know what it is, and sadly, Bob Welch, his life ended quite tragically about 13 years ago.
That's a mental health, mental illness seems to that's a story that runs through the Fleetwood Mac history.
That is a running theme for sure.
Jeremy Spencer leaves the band abruptly
For a religious cult.
for a religious cult. Danny Kerwin, he's got mental health problems. He ends up leaving the band and becoming an alcoholic and doesn't do much of anything, and he's homeless.
I think he's homeless at one point. Yeah, yeah. Very, very sad.
I think Peter Green had some mental health problems. I don't know how to the extent, but and then Bob Welch, which is just very sad. He committed suicide, and just was watching YouTube clip of Stevie Nicks when he did take his own life, and she was just shocked. Like I did. She's like, to get to that point where you're that miserable with your life, I just don't understand. I don't know what happened.
My understanding was that he found out that, I don't know what it was that he was diagnosed with, but basically he was going to be, I don't even know if they use this term anymore, but an invalid. Like he wouldn't be able to take care of himself.
He went in for spinal surgery, and it was unsuccessful.
And he left a note to his wife. He did not want his wife to be burdened with taking care of him. So very sad.
It's very sad, like a 9-page note.
Yeah. But Bob Welch had this ability, and I say it in the book, and I don't mean it as an insult, but I can't think of any other way to say it. He sings like he's asleep.
Right.
Like he sings like he's in his dream state. But and usually he's mixed way back, so you really have to lean in to hear what he's saying. But it works so well, like especially on a song like "Hypnotize." But Future Games, The Ghost. There's so many songs that just, and it's really interesting because I mean he wrote songs like "Born Enchanter," and like it would have been interesting to see what a Fleetwood Mac featuring Bob Welch and Stevie Nicks would have been like, because it seems like they wrote in that same mystical kind of lyrical style.
Would have been fun.
But yeah, there are great songs on those albums, and not just his songs either. Like Kerwin came up with some great songs, and Christine's got songs like I remember when she passed away, which is, another tragedy, but we're almost coming up on 3 years as we're filming this. When she passed away, the song that I saw posted a lot, and they were always saying that this was the song that showed how she had potential to write hit singles, was, again, from Bear Tree, Spare Me a Little of Your Love. Like that song wouldn't have sounded out of place on the self-titled or Rumors. She just wrote good songs, and it didn't really matter who else was in the band. But I mean, but then even in the midst of their huge world-conquering period, you've got Tusk. And Tusk, to me, to Fleetwood Mac is what The Elder is to Kiss. it was more successful, but it's like the album that some people really like it, some people don't like it at all. And that was an album that when I got into the band, I was always very intrigued to get into because they're coming up on the heels of an album that was already successful. Rumors was already like 3, 4 million sold in its time. They're following it up and they come out with this unconventional double album, 20 songs. And Lindsey Buckingham was basically giving the middle finger to the industry saying, we're not going to give you Rumors Volume 2. You want that?
We're going to give you the complete opposite.
We're going to give you the complete opposite. Now, I say that he thought that way. He wanted to do that. He wanted to explore, like he was into Talking Heads and Elvis Costello and The Clash, and he was really into the punk and new wave. I think that Christine and Stevie, so the main writers in the band, I think they just came up with a batch of songs the way they would for any other album. But you've got the mixture of the fairly conventional songs from those two, and then you've got stuff like The Ledge and Not That Funny, and I Know I'm Not Wrong. There's it's a really I really enjoy Tusk, but I would love to have been a fly on the wall at Warner Brothers when they play the album in its entirety, and it's like,
Sure.
here it is. Here's your million selling band. Promote it. Do something with it.
What do you think of Buckingham Nicks? You call that the lost other Fleetwood Mac album with a question mark?
Yeah, that was a great bit of serendipity on my part because I started this book long before this got finally an official reissue after what, 42 years? Like one of the best known albums that had never been officially reissued. There'd been plenty of like gray market reissues of it. I think it's the first time it was officially released on CD, at least. Um, but I mean, plenty of people knew about it. And the way that I describe that album is if you had friends over, if you had a bunch of people over for dinner and you're just kind of sitting around and you put some music on, you could put that album on and people would just go, "Oh, that's Fleetwood Mac. I just don't know these songs." It's not. You're missing the rhythm section. You're missing Christine, but it's there. And I always think those two were better together. No matter what their issues were, when they worked together, you couldn't duplicate it. And that was a perfect segue. I mean, it's just the perfect serendipity where Bob Welch convinces the band to move to California so that they're, where Warner Brothers is, they can get their label's attention a lot easier than being in England. And Mick Fleetwood is talking to Keith Olsen, who produced the Buckingham Nicks album, not even looking for players. He was looking for a studio, I think. And Olsen plays him the song Frozen Love. And Fleetwood's like, who's that guitar player? I want that guitar player. So Fleetwood Mac might not have continued much longer because, yes, the music industry allowed bands to keep trying for a while. But after 9 albums, I would think that, even back then, a label would be like, I don't think this is going to work.
Yeah, that Welch had problems with the record label, or were they changing labels? There was some reason that he left, that he wasn't happy with the future of the band contractually. And then there was this fake Fleetwood Mac band that the manager was going to try to put out there.
That's another story unto itself and a fascinating one. And there was a lot going on with 73, 74. The funny thing is that most average Fleetwood Mac fans kind of know the story of the drama with Lindsey and Stevie, with John and Christine, with Stevie and Mick, with, whatever, the whole thing, right? But the odd thing is that was their most stable lineup. Once Lindsey and Stevie joined, that was their most stable lineup because the fact that it was successful kept it together, I think. Also, I mean, creatively, it was great. Obviously, it was creative. That's what led to the success. But up until then, just about every album had a different lineup because you had a guitar player named Bob Weston come in after Kirwan left. Well, he has an affair with Mick's wife, Jenny.
Yes.
Jenny Boyd, by the way, who was the sister of Patty Boyd.
Yeah.
So, you read about that and you go down all these rabbit holes. Like suddenly it makes a lot of sense. But anyway, Or does it?
That's what makes the story of Fleetwood Mac so fascinating. The history of this band.
But there was already plenty of drama before Lindsey and Stevie came along. It's just you didn't hear about it, right? Because they weren't a high profile band.
You were not on Warner Brothers either,
No, they were.
or they were.
Oh yeah, they were on Warner Brothers from then play on onward.
Okay.
Reprise, Warner, all the same kind of
Oh,
thing.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In the early days, it was confusing because in the UK they were on this label called Blue Horizon. They came out in North America on CBS and yeah, and then Warner reissued them and um, but uh, but 73, 74, yeah, they put the album Penguin out, which had that singer Dave Walker on a couple of songs, who came from Savoy Brown, who sounded nothing like he belonged in Fleetwood Mac. He was a raspy blues singer, and if Black Sabbath fans know that name, he was the guy that was in Black Sabbath for like a second in 1978 when Ozzy briefly left before Never Say Die. So you can see like a BBC clip of them doing, I don't know. I'm not up on my Sabbath, but I think one of the songs that ended up on Never Say Die with this Dave Walker on vocals. So he
Wow.
was he
Dave
was in Black
Walker.
Sabbath for a second. So and then he didn't last. So it was just constant, and they weren't getting anywhere. Really commercially, the albums were charting higher every time. I think probably because they just kept putting them out. But yes, there was a situation, and I think the Bob Weston, Jenny Boyd Fleetwood situation had much to do with it. Mick did not want to tour, but their manager, Clifford Davis, who my understanding was a real snake of a manager,
Sounds like it.
already had a tour booked. So he put these guys together that were in an English band called Stretch and put them on tour as Fleetwood Mac.
Or as the new Fleetwood Mac, or
I don't know how it was billed exactly, but the odd thing about that is that this band Stretch eventually recorded a cover of Showbiz Blues. And I mentioned that where I talk about all the cover versions. Now, I'm excited to hear this, and I'm giving a plug to another author because recently on my show, I don't know if you've talked to him or not, but a guy named Steve McLean.
no.
He's from the UK. He's actually a stand-up comedian, but he's also an author. And he put an excellent book out called Stealing Deep Purple, which is about original lead vocalist Rod Evans putting together a version of Deep Purple in 1980 and touring North America before it got shut down by management. It's a story that I used to think was fake, but it's not. It actually happened. And it's a great read. I would highly recommend getting Steve on, but Steve's also working on a book on the fake Fleetwood Mac, and I can't wait to read it.
Wow. Okay. So then
Yeah.
hopefully when he's doing the press run for that, he's going to be open to coming out.
I can connect you with him after we
Please
film.
do.
But yeah, it made me think of that because that Deep Purple thing is just fascinating. Anytime you have these clandestine these, I mean, nowadays it's not such a big deal. I mean, at one point, how many versions of LA Guns and Rat and the Bullet Boys or whatever were? I mean,
Great
there were
White.
Great White, yeah. Like even now, it's like the ghost of Jack Russell's Great White, is still touring. But anyway, um, yeah. Whatever the reason, Bob Welch left, and the first thing he did was he formed a band called Paris, and I think they did 2 albums on Capitol Records.
It was a 3-man band.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the band members, I want to say, his name was Glenn Cornick. He was the original bassist for Jethro Tull,
Hmm.
something like that.
Yep.
And then he went solo, and his on his first album, which I think was called French Kiss, he redoes his song "Sentimental Lady," which is originally on the Bare Trees album, but he redoes it, has a top 10 hit with it. Most people would know that song whether the title does anything to them or not. Think Mellow Gold AM, it's a yacht rock staple now. But actually, his version of Sentimental Lady is almost more Fleetwood Mac because I think John and Mick play on it. You can hear Christine plain as day on the chorus. And I think Lindsey produced it. He might have played on it.
You mentioned that in the book.
So obviously, there was never any bad blood there. And actually, there's a really cool clip of Bob Welch playing, and I think it's been released at the Roxy in Los Angeles in 1981. There's a really great version of him doing Hypnotized. I think John McVie's playing with him and Christine. I don't know. He had a bunch of the Fleetwood Mac. So there was never any bad blood there.
No, there was that brief period though in he wasn't invited into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he thought they omitted him, but it was the Rock Hall
Yeah,
that said they didn't want him. But they wanted Kerwin in, they wanted Spencer in, but they don't want Bob Welch in.
that
That's politics.
I hate that organization so much. But anyway, they screw up on every turn.
But they made amends, and I think Mick,
Yeah,
backstage at one of the shows, Fleetwood Mac shows, Bob Welch was there, and Mick explained, he's like, Bob, that wasn't our call, man. We wanted you there, and there was also royalties. They renegotiated a deal with the Fleetwood Mac albums, and Bob Welch was a little pissed off because he says, how come I didn't know about this? And the rest of the guys were getting a bigger percentage of the
yeah.
publishing, and he wasn't. But they made amends. Everything was cool.
It's a familiar story, but the nice thing is that I think it's Mystery to Me eventually went gold, which is good. That's probably because of Hypnotized. But Bare Trees went platinum eventually. And as I say in that chapter, it couldn't have happened to a nicer album.
Great album.
It's a great album.
Dust. Kerwin has the title track in Dust.
And Child of Mine is a great song.
Child of Mine.
It's good. Sunny Side of Heaven.
Sunny Side of Heaven.
I mean, they did great instrumentals. They did like Earl Grey on Kiln House, I think. Kiln House or Future Games. I see the albums are so close together, I get them mixed up without looking it up. And thank goodness I wrote it all down.
Hold on, I'll check.
But
I'll check here.
Yeah.
Earl Grey.
Yes, it's on Kiln House. It's a Kerwin song. Yeah, the Bob Welch era needs revisited for sure. And the other thing, and I make mention of this several times, Fleetwood Mac also had a run of some of the worst album covers of any good band I can think of. So do not let those album covers throw you. I think the worst one is that Heroes Are Hard to Find. That is a rough album cover.
There's one where Mick is looking a little emaciated on the cover. That was one of the early.
That's Mr. Wonderful, and he's actually, if you fold that out, he's naked behind some foliage. He had no problem dropping trowel for the camera or dressing in drag, if you look at the English Rose comp. Interesting.
Bare Trees is cool, though. That's like,
well, Bare Trees is at least literal.
Yeah, it's literal, and it's like The Cure. It reminds me of
it does look, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right.
It's very minimalist. But yeah, like it's a really fascinating catalog, and it's also really good. I mean,
it is.
There's a few albums I'm not very partial to, but for the most part, I can find some highlights and some songs that I would say, go check these songs out if nothing else. But again, the great thing and the thing that I hope happens with this is that, like all of my books, if people come back to me and say, I was never really way into their catalog, but now I'm listening to more of the albums, I've ordered a couple. That's always what I like to hear when people get into this. So, I really like how it came out. And I'm really glad that my mother-in-law haphazardly kind of mentioned it, because I never would have gone down this road.
And by the way, isn't your wife's name Sarah?
It is. It's spelled with an H,
yep.
Whereas the Fleetwood Mac song isn't. But yeah, and that's. Boy, you talk about a powerful song.
Well, let's skip ahead. Let's get to that. By the way, the title of the book, The Sound That Haunts You, A Beginner's Companion to Fleetwood Mac, Tim Durling, the author, and he is here to talk about the book. But yeah, let's kind of skip ahead because we did cover Rumors. We did cover Tusk a little bit, but Sarah, which is off of Tusk, Sarah, Not That Funny, Think About Me, Sisters of the Moon, Angel were the singles from that album. But they returned with Mirage in 1982, which I remember well as a kid because that was the early MTV era. And I remember the video for Hold Me, which is one of my favorite songs. And this is an interesting album because, as you say, it gets the short end of the stick from this era of the band.
It's a great album. I mean, it's a really solid Fleetwood Mac album. It's probably the album that Warner Brothers would have preferred to have gotten in 1979. It's a fairly conventional Fleetwood Mac album, but it's really good. I mean, yeah, Hold Me is a great song. Gypsy it quickly became a Fleetwood Mac standard. I mean, that's the Stevie Nicks persona in one song right there. But Mirage came out at a very interesting time because the big thing that happened the year before is that Stevie put out Belladonna, her first solo album, and something happened that very rarely happens. When someone goes solo from a band, they actually become bigger than the band that they're in. Not overall, but Belladonna sold twice as many copies as Mirage sold. Which is, I mean, we're talking about 4 million to 2 million. We're talking in the millions, right? It didn't sell as many as Rumors, but Stevie Nicks became a major rock star in the 80s in her own right, which most basically there was her and Phil Collins, and I mean, you could say Ozzy Osbourne too, but most of the time, these people that go solo don't have those successful careers. I mean, even Steve Perry and Lou Gramm had one album that was really big, and that was it. David Lee Roth, he didn't sustain a solo career.
That gave her leverage over Lindsay.
That, and
ultimately, that's why she's still in the band and he's out. She basically said to them, it's either him or me.
Well, she probably became the singularly most popular member of.
She's in the Rock Hall as a solo artist.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean deservedly so. But yeah, I mean, so the song "Straight Back" on Mirage talks a lot about that. That's about her kind of being pulled. She's got this new career now, and then, I mean, obviously these people were able to coexist and do both, right? I mean, if you think about, Phil Collins and Genesis and Mike and the Mechanics, I mean, they had the chart domination through most of the 80s and the early 90s. But yeah, that was a major shift in power because Lindsay also put a solo album that year, Law and Order. He had a great hit from it, Trouble, great song. And that was an early MTV. And if you watch the video to that song, Bob Welch is in it, Mick Fleetwood's in it. Like it's kind of funny. But the album wasn't
Holiday Road from
Holiday Road. I didn't realize that was him until Sarah and I'm like, oh, that song, okay. And then I listened to it. I'm like, well, of course it's him. It sounds like him. I just wasn't thinking. But yeah, the dynamics and leverage, like you said. But Mirage overall has got some great album tracks on it, like Empire State. I love Eyes of the World. No, yeah, Eyes of the World. I kept thinking that's Rainbow, but yes, it's a different song by Rainbow. But yeah, there's great songs on that album, and it doesn't get the attention that it should. And then
Love in Store is a good one too, isn't it?
Love in Store was a minor hit. It was a good again, Christine.
When did Christine do her solo album? She had Got a Hold on Me, which is
that was 80. Yeah,
great song,
fantastic song. Yeah, yeah, she did that. Yeah, that was 84. So there. Fleetwood Mac were sort of so this is what I was saying at the beginning. Like when I started really listening to the radio was tail end of 84 into 85. So the first few songs I would have heard were like Christine's song, and then I remember Lindsay had Go Insane, and then of course Stevie with Stand Back and Edge of 17 and Stop Dragging My Heart Around, and then she had Talk to Me and I Can't Wait. So I knew those songs, and then when Tango in the Night came out, because believe it or not, I mean, I talk about this in the book. I'm not so sure that I knew any of those Fleetwood Mac songs prior to hearing them in later years. I don't think I heard the stuff from Rumors when it was out. I mean, I would only been 3 when that album came out, but the radio was always on. I just don't. It just doesn't click in. But the song that I do remember hearing from those early years is "Say You Love Me," but as I say in my introduction, I'm not sure what version of that song I was hearing because back in the 70s, and I think I've talked about this before, but Canadian radio and television from like 1970, 71 onward, there was the CanCon ruling, which meant that Canadian broadcasters had to average 30% Canadian content throughout their broadcast day by law. And to make sure that Canadian artists got played. Well, what ended up happening a lot, unfortunately, by the end of the 70s, it wasn't so common anymore, but it used to be, if you go back and look at old charts, it's kind of blatantly obvious that this producers and labels would get Canadian singers to record American or British popular songs in the hopes that radio stations would play their version so that it would classify as half CanCon. So I'm not sure if I was hearing Say You Love Me by Fleetwood Mac back in the late 70s on the radio, or if I was hearing a version that was done by a singer-songwriter from actually my home province of New Brunswick named Shirley Ikard, because she did a version of that too, which was very, very similar. So it's too far back in the memory banks for me to remember that. And I mention that when I talk about the cover versions, because I think that people need to realize that she also wrote her own songs. So Shirley Eichart passed away a few years ago, but her rent money was paid because a song that she wrote called "Something to Talk About" became a top five single for Bonnie Raitt. So she could write her own songs. But yeah, that may be the version of "Say You Love Me." I heard it, so it might not have been until like "Big Love" and "Seven Wonders" and "Little Lies" that I was hearing Fleetwood Mac.
That's another cool part of the book. Going back again, Fleetwood Mac Undercover. People can check out all those cover versions. But you entered on Tango in the Night, and that album is stacked.
Love it.
That's such a great album. That has Big Love, Seven Wonders, which it's just phenomenal. Everywhere, Caroline, Tango in the Night, Little Lies. I mean, that right there, that's a handful of
those are
huge hit singles.
It's a great album, and even if you get the deluxe version, the 30th anniversary version, there's about 7 extra tracks. Down Endless Street, Ricky, they were great. They were on a creative roll, or at least Lindsey was. Apparently, that album started off life as a Lindsey solo album. That was going to be his second solo album. They basically begged him to graft it on, right? And as we know, he left before the band went on tour. But what a great album! And I was talking about this on another show. The production on that album does not sound dated, and it is like high fidelity. Like it is just pristine production, not a note out of place. And I think I described Little Lies as like 3.5 minutes of pop perfection. It just doesn't get better. You can't get an earworm better than that. I mean, and the arrangements. Lindsey Buckingham was so missed on the 2 albums that followed. I mean,
what a bizarre period too. Yeah,
it was such a blow to them creatively, even though you had Stevie and Christine, who were capable singers and songwriters. It was Lindsey's production and arrangement know-how that elevated those songs from good to great.
You hear the difference. Like a 1990s Behind the Mask, they have Save Me on there, and it's like you're listening to Fleetwood Mac, but it almost feels like a Fleetwood Mac cover band in a way. There's something off about it. It's a good, the songs are good, but there's something missing there.
Yeah, "Save Me" is a great song that could have been on Tango in the Night. The cool thing about that song, and
"Sky's the Limit" is the other one that.
Yeah, that was the other.
The production is.
I write about that album a lot. I think that there are some good songs in that album, but it's the one that came out after that most people don't even know about.
Oh my God.
Because that was a black hole in their career, is the album Time that came out in 1995, which, as I've
said, that's like Twilight Zone. Like, did that really happen?
I've said many times, but by the time that album,
by the way, Rick Vito and Billy Burnett were on Behind the Mask.
Perfectly capable singers and songwriters, right?
But they were only on. Oh no, okay. So Burnett's on the next one, Time.
Burnett came
back.
Dave
Mason.
Yeah, Burnett came back because he was out of the band. He came back after that album was like halfway recorded. That's why that's why Michael Thompson, who's a well-known studio guitarist, is on some of the tracks. It's a strange period.
We got to talk about Time, 1995.
I was working in radio by this point. I didn't know Fleetwood Mac had an album out. That's how under the radar it was.
Tim, they played at Toad's Place in New Haven, Connecticut, which is like 2,000 people. I'm pretty certain that they played at that tour. They came and played in front of a couple thousand people.
Well, I do know that they were down to playing multi-act bills, which they had never had to do.
Yeah.
So their star had fallen.
But like Stevie Nicks said, to the credit of Mick Fleetwood, when that's his baby, that's his band, he was going to keep it going no matter what, and he did. Christine McVie, Dave Mason, Billy Burnett, John McVie, Mick Fleetwood, and Becca Bramlett.
Becca Bramlett, yes, daughter of Delaney and Bonnie Bramlett.
I mean, it is just surreal. And you think Dave Mason, you plug him in there on paper, you're thinking, hey, this is going to be interesting.
Well, he's got one song, I think it's called Blow by Blow, that's okay.
Is it? Okay. I got to listen to it again. I tried listening to it once and I couldn't.
I find it a rough listen. There's one song on there, and I mentioned this in the book. There's one song on there that I think is okay, and it's one of Christine's songs.
Which one?
Oh, I don't want to give it all away. Okay. Now, I Do is the song that charted. That hit number 62 in Canada, and I think it's the only where it charted anywhere in the world.
So we'll let people read the book to find out.
That's not the one. There is actually a pretty good song there, but for the most part, it's very generic, very country, and ultimately does not sound like Fleetwood Mac. It could have been any number of Nashville up and comers, like outside songwriters are putting songs in which never happened before. They were always a self-contained band. Christine had one foot out the door. Lindsay was long gone. Stevie was long gone. Vito was long gone. Burnett, like I said, came back, so they were recording it with outside guitar players. They grafted Dave Mason, who was in Traffic and a solo artist in his own right, into it. Was a weird lineup.
Weird.
Very weird lineup. And I don't know this for sure, but I mean, as you know, the 90s were the time of reunions, Kiss and the Eagles. And
should have been Van Halen with Dave.
I think that, yeah,
that should have happened.
I think that the Fleetwood Mac lineup that got back together for the dance, I think that would have happened. But I think the reason it happened when it did is because Warner Brothers said to Mick, look, I don't care what you got to do. You get the best known lineup back together or you're off the label, because that album disappeared. It had a worldwide peak of 47 in the UK. This is Fleetwood Mac we're talking about here. I mean, that's how under the radar, that's how like it's like a black hole. Like it's yeah, it's like, did this actually exist? Like anybody could have put an album up and stuck Fleetwood Mac on the cover, and yeah, it's not a good album. I've yet to run into someone that actually likes that album. It may happen.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
It might happen, but I have yet to meet that person. Who knows?
See, to me, those are the fascinating periods of a band where they just breeze right past it on the VH1 Behind the Music. But I want to know what was going through their minds. Like
a great quote from a guy I'm sure you know. He's an author, Chuck Klosterman.
Oh yeah,
yeah, Fargo, Rock City, and yeah,
really.
Chuck was talking about Kiss, and he said, and this is so true. It's stuck. He said, if you like a band, you're interested in the high points in their career. But if you love a band, you want to know about the low points. You want to know when the wheels are coming off. You want to know about Music from the Elder. You want to know about Saint Anger. You want to know about Time. That's the Fleetwood Mac entry in there.
How did they get through it?
Rock in a Hard Place, like it's
oh
man. I mean, I was thinking about this, and it's like, can you imagine if the reunion couldn't happen for some reason? Fleetwood Mac could have been releasing albums on CMC. They could have been knocked down to the indie labels. That's how amazingly this album bombed. Like it was just a perfect bomb of an album. It just, so you listen to Behind the Mask, and then you listen to Time, then you listen to Behind the Mask. Behind the Mask is a masterpiece compared to Time. But the thing about Behind the Mask that I remember this well, long before I was a fan, that was in the delete bins like within months. I remember seeing, back when CDs still came in long boxes, racks upon racks of this album, because it's Fleetwood Mac, right? Warner's would have pressed a ton of them. And the interesting thing about that, we were talking about Save Me, which I think is a great song, far and away the saving grace of that album. That song only peaked at 33 in the US on the Billboard Hot 100. For some reason, it went all the way to number 7 up here in Canada.
Wow.
That was a big song for them. And if they'd had 2 or 3 more songs that did that, it might have been a different story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the loss of Lindsey Buckingham hit them hard.
And then Stevie's gone.
Yeah, but just having that know-how, because what would happen is the songs that Stevie contributed to that album were generally good songs, but they just sounded like songs from one of her solo albums.
Yeah.
It needed the glue. It needed Lindsey, and it was a, what are you going to do? He doesn't want to, he didn't want to tour. It's amazing that he stuck around as long as he did, but yeah, it would have left Mick Fleetwood in a very awkward, precarious position, right?
Are you surprised it took that long for them to put out another studio album? Because that wasn't wasn't until 2003. 97, you had The Dance. It was all live, but there were some new songs.
There were 4 new songs on it. Yeah.
Great album. I love the new songs.
I wish
which some of them they put on Say You Will, right? The ones
just Bleed to Lover.
Bleed to Lover, yeah, which is a great song. Yeah.
Great, fantastic song. Yeah. I wish there were more albums. You know what I mean? I wish there were more albums that to talk about, and because there's you don't get a lot.
They toured a lot, didn't they? They were touring consistently.
They did, yeah. A lot of the time they were doing it without Christine, but um, I wish with Say You Will, it had 18 songs on it. It was a long album, and then there were, if you got the some of the worldwide deluxe versions, it ended up being 20. I kind of wish they'd have made two 10-song albums and staggered them. So two different cover arts, two different titles, two different albums to discuss. I really wish they'd done like with Metallica did with Load and Reload, something like that, because there's just not a lot. And then it irritates me to this very day that EP they put out in 2013 still doesn't exist physically. They put an EP out just called Extended Play in 2013, 4 new songs, and it only exists digitally. One song on there, which is called Sad Angel, you can get that if you buy the 3 CD version of a best of they put out in 2018 called, I think it's called 50 Years Don't Stop. That's the only way you can get one of those songs. And I do not understand a band of their age putting out a digital only release where most of their fan base are going to want to buy physical. I keep hoping it'll get reissued, but I almost didn't even want to talk about it because it annoyed me so badly. But it's like, well, I kind of have to talk about it. So I had to go on YouTube and listen to those songs. However, I think that the album that Lindsay and Christine put out in 2017 is a really good album, and I include it because it's a Fleetwood Mac album in everything but name, because John plays on it and Mick plays on it. The only person that's not on it is Stevie, and as you were saying, I have to think that's got something to do with why it didn't come out under the Fleetwood Mac name, which of course would have given it a wider audience. But that Buckingham McVie album is really, really good. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a Fleetwood Mac album. It's very much like the last Steve Lukather album called Bridges, which he put out in 2023. That's a Toto album. If you look at the personnel on that album, it's got David Pace, it's got Joseph Williams, it's got Shannon Forrest, it's got Lee Sklar, it's got tons of Toto personnel. There's a dispute with the Jeff Porcaro estate. They can tour as Toto, but they can't put new music out. I think it's the same type of thing with the Buckingham McVie album, unfortunately. I hope people go back and check that out because so far that's the newest thing.
Yeah. Would you like to see them make an album with Neil Finn and Mike Campbell?
I can't see it happening. I mean, I remember being confused at first. I'm like, Neil Finn? Like Crowded House? Split? But then I got thinking about, well, he is kind of in the same vocal range. And Mike Campbell, of course, I mean, Stevie Nicks and the Heartbreakers, and I get it. It makes sense.
But his songwriting skills, Mike Campbell, I think that's what I'd be so interested in hearing something new from Fleetwood Mac with his influence.
Yeah.
His songwriting. I mean, we're talking about a guy who wrote The Boys of Summer for Don Henley and
Boys of Summer, like you could full stop it right there. That's one of the greatest songs ever written, right?
Right.
But
and he helped to structure those classic Petty songs with his riffs and his, just coming to Petty with those songs.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those Tom Petty songs are so simple. You have to have the right band playing them to make them exciting. Otherwise, they would just be dead simple songs, right? Like, so yeah, it might be interesting, but at this point in time, I don't see why you couldn't. They don't have to be in the room at the same time, like Lindsay, I mean, to record songs. They could put together, I still wish that they had taken, with the album Lindsay and Christine did, take those 4 songs from that EP and graft them on there. Now you've got some Stevie content, reissue it as a Fleetwood Mac album. It wouldn't be the first time that's happened. I mean, look at David Coverdale. He put that Into the Light album in 2000. Well, now it's out as a Whitesnake album.
Hey, I just saw he made some announcement today. What did he?
He's retired, which didn't surprise me. I guess I just figured he was. But but I mean, but all of these, I'm
a little concerned too. Lindsay, he had some health issues. His heart, he had a problem with his heart. He had open heart surgery.
Yeah, he's been posting a lot of videos where he's like showing how to play some of his songs, and then it's kind of cool. Like he and his daughter sit and we'll watch some of his old videos and talk about them.
Okay. Yeah, I saw a few of those. Does he look okay?
I mean, he talks a little slower, but he seems lucid. You know what I mean? Okay. One of the cool things, I saw a video, like he was answering fan mail, And it was really cool because I kind of didn't see it coming. And he was talking about how much he loved Thin Lizzy. I thought that was cool.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool. I didn't know
yeah.
that.
Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, and who knows what's in the vaults? That's the other thing. But it's just a shame that it's like Van Halen, man. I just wish there were more latter day albums. There were so many such big gaps of time without any new music. I want to hear new music. They can tour all they want. I want to hear new music. I'm one of those guys.
Did you hear the news? Alex's next book is coming out. So I think it's a mostly photos book.
Well, I'm hoping. Well, maybe I was kind of hoping he would finish his first one
Yeah.
and pick up after 1984.
Yeah. It's
I got a real problem with that book, man. That was just, I mean, it stopped and it was like, come on, man. Like, you really gonna take that with you to your grave, your bitterness
yeah.
with Sammy?
Yeah, here it is. Genesis Publications reveal upcoming Van Halen book authored by Alex Van Halen. Let's see. Chronicle. So featuring a dynamic blend of iconic photography alongside rare and never before seen images, exclusive access to his private archives. Alex offers a personally guided tour through the band's legendary career. But again, it's
Yeah,
1978 through 1984.
yeah, and see, you know what? I'm not gonna buy this one. I'm done. Unless you're gonna do it right and get your head out of your whatever. Yeah, I got a real problem with that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of photography, I do want to mention this. This is something that I think is important. The um, the artwork on this cover. This was done.
What a great cover.
Yeah, this was done by my wife's best friend, Sally Ann Morgan, who's not a published artist by any stretch, but she did a couple of sketches for us personally of a couple of our pets that are no longer with us, and they were just beautiful pencil drawings like this. Now you've seen those pictures online of a kid listening to a record player, and it'll say, "Remember the first time," and it'll have pick an album cover. That'll put it there. That's kind of what I had in mind, but I wanted to have a penguin because Fleetwood Mac uses penguins a lot. That's kind of their mascot.
Right.
Listening to Fleetwood Mac with headphones, you could see the top hat and the cane. I love how this came out. She
It
just
really is beautiful.
Yeah, I wanted it to look. I'll tell you what I wanted this to look like, Eric, was the anti-AI because there are so many ugly looking AI books out there. Matt Phillips, my good buddy that helps design the books and put them together for me, he sent me this one that just came out, and it's one of those covers where if you look at it for more than 2 seconds, you're like, that's not Fleetwood Mac. Those aren't people. Those aren't real people.
No, it's really
It'll be the death of us all, I think.
Well, I think it's just going to come down to people are just going to get sick of
it.
Or they're going to connect more with the actual real human beings. Again, you can't fake the real human emotion that comes from art. So I think I think we'll be okay. I think AI is great for certain things, but for art, it is not.
Yeah, like
for art, it's not. I mean, like now, I listened to a new podcast, and I was looking forward to listening to it. But the whole intro is an AI generated song.
Yeah,
like you could tell, like they just they typed in, "Write me a rock song about." I'm not going to say the name of the podcast. That doesn't matter. But anyway, you could tell it was just created by an AI.
And I think that's the thing. Somehow you can just tell.
Yeah.
And there's something about that. So that's why, like a lot of my books, we've licensed photos. I mean, with my YNT book, I had the absolute privilege of having Hugh Syme do it. But I'm not going to be able to get Hugh Syme to do all my books.
No.
Now I will say this: the Kansas book, Let It Be Your Guide. That's AI assisted. That's AI assisted.
I remember you told me that.
So Matt put that together. He gave it the idea and the iconography, but he fine-tuned it a lot. I mean, he made sure that the sailor didn't have five fingers and two thumbs and things like that. But yeah, I wanted this to have a homemade, homespun look to it. So
has she considered like framing that and selling it as a piece of art? I mean, it's beautiful.
She's very self-effacing about it, but you can get it as an art print through TeePublic through my account. So it is possible.
There you go. Yeah, there you
go. I she sent me back the rough sketch of it, and I'm just like, that's it.
Oh,
because it was so hard to get. It's like I've got an idea in my mind, and that was it. She made it real. So yeah, and also I want to give a shout out to Pete Pardo from Sea of Tranquility for writing the foreword to this book. That was a real pleasure too.
The Sound That Haunts You, a beginner's companion to Fleetwood Mac, out now. Find it through Amazon, people can find you online. You got the YouTube channel.
Yeah, Tim's Final Confessions on all. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. I still call it Twitter. And yeah, I've had the YouTube channel now since 2014. Going to keep on going, and I'm in the midst, like I do whenever I have a book out, of doing a deep dive series, as you know, on all of the Fleetwood Mac albums. So that's just getting underway. I think we're just about, as we're filming this, we're just about to get to Kiln House. So we got a long way to go, but yeah.
I'm a subscriber, so I always enjoy watching the videos. And by the way, folks, go to Amazon and look for all the great books. You got Unspooled, which is a great history of 8 tracks. The book on Y&T, Down for the Count. Let It Be Your Guide, the Kansas album review. Red on Black, the Listener's Guide to Sammy Hagar, and Sing Me Away, the Night Ranger album review.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, 5 years ago, I had no books. Now I've got 6.
You are now a prolific
It's
veteran author. Let me tell you.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it without, a little help from my friends. I couldn't do it without Matt, and I couldn't do it without my good friend Andy Campbell, who does the proofreading for me, because proofreading sucks. I hate it.
I know. I heard you talk about that.
But it's so important.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got 2 more that I'm working on.
I was about to ask, what do you got? What do you got?
I think you know about one of them, because I think
know about one of them.
You're going to be in it. So, but yeah, so that's all. I'm always working on something. But this one, I'm hoping to ride this one and promote it, because I know that obviously with the name like Fleetwood Mac, this has a chance of reaching an audience that bigger audience than most of the bands I write about. But after that, I'm going to get back to normal, write about obscure stuff, but stuff that's good and needs written about. So, but
the underdogs,
I stand by this, because this is like a latecomers version of getting into Fleetwood Mac, which is my whole goal with. I hope that people end up like me and be like, you know what? I guess I like this band after all. There are bands you take for granted. You hear them all the time. But then you're like, no, really, really listen. This is good stuff. This is well constructed, well written songs, well played, well sung, well produced, all of that.
Amen to that. Tim Durling, thanks, man.
Thanks, Eric.